So you've decided to open a gym. It looks like the cleanest business model in the world. Customers pay you every single month, whether they walk through the door or not. No inventory sits rotting in a warehouse, no shipping delays, no product returns, just a card on file, charged automatically month after month for a room full of equipment you already own. That's the pitch. That's why so many people daydream about it. Here's what the daydream leaves out. In 2020, 24-Hour Fitness, a chain with 3.4 million paying members, filed for bankruptcy, carrying $1.4 billion in debt. That same year, Gold's Gym, the brand that built the modern bodybuilding industry out of a converted warehouse on Venice Beach in 1965, also filed for Chapter 11. Two giants of an industry built on recurring payments, both buried by debt in the same 12 months. So the automatic monthly charge isn't the safety net it appears to be. Something underneath this business quietly works against the owner, even while the money keeps arriving. Where does that money actually go before it ever becomes profit? And why does a business built on repetition, the same members, the same machines, the same routine, turn out to be one of the more fragile models in American retail? That contradiction is the whole story. Picture the 2nd of January. A woman walks into a gym holding a duffel bag with the tag still tucked inside the zipper pocket. She signed up 11 days ago, motivated by a private promise she made to herself somewhere around a dinner table on New Year's Eve. She'll come 4 times this month, then twice. Then by March, her card will still be charged and she won't set foot inside again until she finally remembers to call and cancel, usually months later than she meant to. She is not an outlier. She is, statistically, the business. Economists Stefano Della Vigna and Ulrica Malmendier tracked 7,752 health club members across 3 years and found something that shouldn't be possible in a rational market. People who chose a flat monthly membership over $70 attended an average of 4.3 times a month, paying more than $17 per visit, when a 10-visit pass sitting right next to them at the front desk would have cost $10 a visit. They expected to come 9.5 times a month. They came less than half that. That's not a rounding error. That's the entire business model. A gym doesn't primarily sell fitness. It sells a version of the future self, the one who shows up at 6 a.m., who never skips leg day, who finally becomes consistent, and it prices that imagined person into a contract signed by the real one. The real one, distracted, tired, occasionally sick, occasionally just done for the day, is the one who actually pays the bill. Before you understand a single cost on this business, you have to understand that member. Because everything that follows, the size of the building, the number of treadmills, the price on the door, is built around predicting exactly how often she won't come. But that member hasn't even walked in yet in our story. Before she can miss a single workout, you first have to build the room she's going to skip. Most new gym owners don't buy real estate, they lease it, and the lease is where the first surprise hides. A mid-sized commercial gym needs somewhere between 15,000 and 40,000 square feet, depending on the format. That's not a boutique yoga studio footprint, that's closer to a grocery store. And unlike a grocery store, a gym can't function in whatever shell it's handed. The building has to survive something a retail space never has to survive. Hundreds of bodies raising the room's temperature and humidity every single hour, all day, every day. That single fact, bodies generating heat, quietly rewrites the entire construction budget. A standard commercial HVAC installation for a facility of this size runs somewhere between $130,000 and $260,000 before a single treadmill is bolted to the floor. Add fire safety systems, another $65,000 to $195,000. Add flooring engineered to survive dropped Olympic bars and 1,000 footfalls a day. Rubber flooring alone runs $3 to $12 per square foot, and platform zones built for heavy lifting cost even more. By the time a shell space becomes a functioning gym, build-out costs commonly land between $30 and $200 per square foot, depending on how raw the space was to begin with. On a 20,000 square foot facility, that's a swing between $600,000 and $4 million, and that's before equipment arrives. Here's the detail almost nobody outside the industry knows. The air conditioning bill for a gym isn't a background expense, it's a structural one engineered into the blueprints before the first client ever exhales into the room. You are not building a place to work out. You're building a machine for absorbing and expelling human heat 12 hours a day and charging $10 to $25 a month for the privilege. That's the building. Now you have to fill it. A single commercial treadmill can run anywhere from $3,000 to $12,000. Multiply that across a cardio floor of 30 or 40 machines, then add strength equipment, cable stations, free weights, turf zones, and the number stops looking like a purchase and starts looking like a mortgage. Planet Fitness's own franchise disclosure documents put equipment costs for a single location between $400,000 and $900,000, on top of a build-out that runs $800,000 to $1.8 million for the space itself. Add the $20,000 franchise fee, and the full range to open one Planet Fitness location today sits between roughly $1.3 million and $5.4 million. Read that number again. Planet Fitness, the chain famous for a $10 a month membership, the one that markets itself as the anti-gym for people intimidated by gyms, requires more capital to open a single location than most people will spend on a house. That's the paradox sitting at the center of the entire budget industry. The cheaper the membership looks to the customer, the more expensive the machine behind the curtain usually is. Because low prices only work at enormous volume, and enormous volume requires enormous square footage, and enormous square footage requires enormous upfront capital that has to be repaid whether members show up or not. And equipment doesn't just sit there depreciating quietly. It breaks. A snapped cable, a worn treadmill belt, a squeaking incline motor. These are daily maintenance calls, not annual ones, because the whole point of the machines is that strangers abuse them for 12 hours a day, every day for years. So the room is built, the machines are installed, nobody has paid you $1 yet, and the next line item is one most people never even think to ask about. A gym is, by design, a room full of heavy objects being lifted by untrained strangers under minimal supervision. That sentence alone explains why insurance is not optional. General liability insurance for a fitness facility typically runs $500 to $2,000 a year for a smaller studio, but that number climbs past $10,000 annually for larger, 24-hour, or high-risk facilities offering competitions, youth programs, or open equipment access. Add professional liability for trainers, workers' compensation for staff, and property coverage for the equipment itself, and a mid-sized gym's total insurance bill can land anywhere from $2,700 to well over $10,000 a year. A bill that exists entirely to cover an injury that, statistically, the gym is confident won't happen, but cannot legally operate without covering anyway. That's the strange economics of insurance in this industry. You're paying every single year for the version of your business where someone gets hurt on your equipment, a version that may never recur, priced into your budget as if it already has. And insurance doesn't just protect against a member with a torn rotator cuff. It protects against something else entirely, something 2019 proved in dramatic fashion at the opposite end of the fitness market. Equinox, the luxury chain charging upwards of $3,000 a year for membership, found itself facing a wave of member cancellations that had nothing to do with equipment or injury. Its chairman, real estate developer Stephen Ross, hosted a high-dollar fundraiser for a sitting president in the Hamptons. Within hours, members were publicly threatening to cancel, front desks were fielding a flood of complaint calls, and a rival chain, New York Sports Club, began offering fee waivers specifically to members leaving Equinox. Equinox itself stated Ross was a passive investor uninvolved in daily management, but the backlash landed on the gym's front desk, not on the boardroom. That's a cost no contractor's invoice will ever list: reputational exposure. A gym's brand can be damaged by decisions made by people its members have never met, in rooms its members will never enter, and the bill still arrives as membership cancellations. The building can be insured, the equipment can be insured, the brand cannot. Walk through a gym at 5:45 a.m. and it already has a staffed front desk, a cleaning crew that arrived before sunrise, and often a manager unlocking doors that will stay open for 18 hours straight. Walk through the same gym at 11 p.m. and someone is still there closing. Labor is where the recurring revenue fantasy collides hardest with reality. Front desk staff are typically paid close to minimum wage, turn over constantly, and have to be retrained every few months. Personal trainers usually work on commission, meaning the gym absorbs the overhead of recruiting and licensing them, while sharing revenue only when they successfully sell a client on ongoing sessions. Cleaning staff, one of the most overlooked line items in the entire business, became a non-negotiable budget-defining cost after 2020, when members started expecting visibly sanitized equipment between every single use. Here's the detail that catches new owners off guard. A gym's labor cost doesn't scale down during slow hours the way a restaurant's does. A restaurant can send the dinner shift home after the rush ends. A 24-hour gym has to keep someone on the floor at 3 a.m. for the 3 members who might walk in, because the promise of round-the-clock access is the entire value proposition being sold at the front desk. You're not staffing a business with predictable hours. You're staffing a building that has agreed contractually to never fully close. And all of that payroll, insurance, equipment financing, and lease is being paid every month by members like the woman with the duffel bag, most of whom, as it turns out, aren't actually using what they're paying for. This is where the businesses that survive and the businesses that don't begin to separate from each other. Planet Fitness was not originally billed as a discount brand. It began in 1992 when 2 brothers, Michael and Mark Grandal, bought a failing Gold's Gym franchise in Dover, New Hampshire. The gym they inherited was chasing the same customer every other gym in America was chasing: the serious lifter, the competitive bodybuilder, the person who wants heavy plates and mirrors. The Grandals looked at the numbers and made a different bet entirely. They rebuilt the brand around the customer everyone else was ignoring, the person intimidated by gyms, the one who joins in January and quietly disappears by March. And they priced the whole business around that person's real behavior instead of their aspirational one. That's the mechanism most members never think about. A low-priced gym isn't succeeding despite low attendance. It's succeeding because of it. At $10 to $15 a month, Planet Fitness cannot survive if even a fraction of its members show up daily. The machines, the space, and the staffing simply aren't built for that kind of traffic. The business plan depends on exactly what Della Vigna and Malmendier documented in their research. Members who intend to come pay to keep that intention alive and mostly don't act on it. Contrast that with the opposite end of the market. Equinox prices its memberships at multiples of Planet Fitness's rates specifically because its promise is different. Not come whenever it's cheap, but come here and be seen coming here. The high price isn't only paying for nicer towels, it's paying for a smaller, more curated member base, better maintained equipment, and a staff-to-member ratio that a $10 gym could never afford to offer. 2 completely different businesses wearing the same industry label, solving the exact same underlying math problem with opposite pricing strategies. A gym doesn't become profitable because people work out inside it. It becomes profitable because ownership correctly predicted how much they wouldn't. Both models, the volume gym and the luxury gym, share one vulnerability neither pricing strategy can fully protect against: fixed costs that don't shrink when the doors have to close. In 2014, a group led by AEA investors and the Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan bought 24-Hour Fitness in a leveraged buyout worth roughly $1.85 billion, loading the company with debt in the process, a standard private equity playbook. By early 2020, the chain was carrying $1.3 billion in that acquired debt, already losing members to cheaper budget gyms on one side and boutique studios on the other. Then in March 2020, all of its 448 locations closed simultaneously. Membership revenue collapsed towards zero while the lease payments, the loan payments, and a portion of the payroll kept coming due. By June, the company filed Chapter 11, eventually eliminating $1.2 billion of debt and permanently closing more than 100 clubs. Gold's Gym, the brand that gave the world the image of Arnold Schwarzenegger training on Venice Beach, hit the same wall from a different angle. It owned only about 10% of its nearly 700 locations outright, the rest were franchised. But that 10% still carried enough lease obligations to force the company into bankruptcy in May 2020, closing 30 corporate-owned gyms before eventually being sold at auction for $100 million to a German fitness group. Neither chain failed because people stopped wanting to work out. Both failed because a business with enormous fixed costs and thin operating margins has almost no room to absorb a shock. A restaurant can pivot to takeout. A retailer can sell online. A gym whose entire product depends on bodies physically occupying a room has no equivalent escape hatch. And the lease attached to the real estate doesn't pause just because the doors are locked. A hospital doesn't become expensive because of its equipment. It becomes expensive because every hour it's open has a cost, whether or not a single patient walks in. A gym runs on the same quiet arithmetic. The lease accrues at 3 a.m. whether anyone is lifting anything. The loan on the equipment comes due whether the treadmills are running or standing still under fluorescent light in an empty room.
Step back far enough, and the entire industry starts to look less like a fitness business and more like a very specific kind of financial instrument, one that converts a small number of daily users and a much larger number of habitual non-users into a single, blended, remarkably stable monthly revenue stream. The U.S. fitness industry now generates more than $90 billion a year, and health club memberships have grown roughly 20% between 2019 and 2024, according to the Health and Fitness Association, even after an era in which some of its most famous names went bankrupt. That's not a contradiction. It's the same mechanism playing out at industry scale. Growth in members who intend to attend, layered on top of a business model that has never actually required them to. Every layer of this business, the HVAC engineered for body heat, the insurance priced for an accident that hasn't happened, the payroll that never fully sleeps, the equipment financed years before it's paid off, exists underneath a member's room that, on any given evening, is mostly empty. The next time you walk past a gym window at 9 p.m. and see 3 people on treadmills in a room built for 200, you're not looking at a failing business. You're looking at exactly the business its owners designed, a room engineered around the 2 most predictable facts in the entire fitness industry, that people believe sincerely in January that they'll show up every day, and that most of them by March simply won't. Everything from the size of the lease to the price on the door was built around that gap. The gym isn't selling a workout, it's pricing your best intentions and quietly, dependably, banking the difference.
Subscribe for more business breakdowns like this, and if there's another business or asset you'd like broken down this way, leave it in the comments.